welcome. I want to get right to welcome our guest today, Hasan Oswald, the director, producer, writer, additional camera, editor, or of the film. Or were you the editor or co-editor? Did you have? Oh, wait, I'm
Additional
sorry,
editor.
Kate. Kate was the editor.
Ever on the call,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was the editor.
Sorry, Kate.
That's okay.
And Annelise Mecca, who was, let me see, producer, co-cinematographer, assistant editor, and still photographer. Did I miss something? You got the coffee too, right?
Did everything.
Yeah.
She was amazing. She got the trust of Medea even. Like
Right.
so much of it. She was great.
And Kate, is it plum or plum? Is it,
Plum like the fruit.
like the fruit? Okay, the editor. And just have a ton of questions. First of all, I really I love the film. I just thought it was a really special film. I love that, in telling Media's story, you got at the larger picture of what was going on in the in the area, and how not just specifically the Yazidi, is it Yazidi? Is that how you pronounce it? The
Yep.
Yazidi people are dealing with the terrorism around in ISIS, but really just, in the larger picture, how everyone's coping with terrorism there and the residual trauma that it creates. And also, I was really struck by how, in the midst of all this anguish and pain, Medea was able to kind of take in the beauty of the world around her. Um, and, some of those shots, like I'm thinking particularly of the butterfly shot, that's in the trailer as well. But very a lot of special things, and but we have our attendees here are mainly filmmakers themselves. Um, and unlike maybe some of the Q&As that you do that tend to focus on Medea and her, feelings about the film and, what her life is like now, we really wanted to get in the weeds of the filmmaking itself. Um, and Kate will get to you, but for a while now, we'll just be mainly focusing on Hassan and Annalise. But so, how did you two meet, and how did the film come about?
Sure, yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Doug, so much for the invite to come on and talk about this project. So Annalise and I went to university together at Villanova University, right outside of Philadelphia. And neither of us worked in journalism or were studying journalism, film, nothing. I shortly after graduation, I actually went abroad to be an English teacher, so still no interest in film. And Annalise went off to do her own thing as well. I got into the film industry 2015, 2016, and I made my first project, Higher Love. Annalise remained a close friend. And then Annalise, when we were talking about sort of what my next project was going to be, she expressed interest in getting into journalism. She had worked in the NGO and human rights space. And so I have a sister who at the time was in the Kurdish region working on a similar story. So I had interest in the Yazidi story. I had heard about it, the genocide that had occurred. And then, yeah, Annalise, you can kind of pick it up from there as far as what inspired you to go over and how we got started.
Yeah, so I was more in the humanitarian space. I had just finished a master's in international development, so I was working with NGOs, and I was finding that I was gravitating more towards storytelling for the NGOs because they were doing a lot of really good things, especially the small ones that were really concentrated on exactly what they wanted to work on. They had projects that were really specific, and so they were successful. And so I was doing photos and videos for them, and that's actually, so I reached out to Hasan because I knew he was going to be moving on to his next project soon from Higher Love. And I said I wanted to be involved in any way I could. And we started brainstorming from there, right from the bat. We were in communication a lot, and same with Anissa, his sister. And so I actually reached out to an organization in the Kurdistan region that worked specifically with Yazidis, because we knew we wanted to focus on a Yazidi story. So I said I could do photos and videos for them. This is my work I've done before, but it's with the intention of doing a documentary in the end. I just want to get to know the community a little bit and see where it goes from there. So I was a communications manager for a small NGO working with Yazidi women. And while it was actually my manager at the NGO that introduced us to Ghazwan, he was coming around a lot, and he was really vocal about his family and what they were looking for their younger brother. His parents were missing, and he was just interested in talking to anyone, everyone, and we knew that he represented this family that was searching for their own loved ones, that it wasn't really the government doing anything. So that was just really interesting. And it was obvious right from the beginning that he was someone that we should talk to, and a family that we should get to know.
And he was what, about maybe 13 then?
He was 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Mediha was about 15 when you started filming with
her? She was 15. Yeah, he just hadn't turned 13. They're more than 2 years apart, but yeah, he was about 12 and would turn 13 while we were like in the first few months. And Mediha was 15. Okay. And then their two brothers are younger.
So he led you to Mediha. And
immediately,
can you talk about meeting her and how those initial talks went? Was she immediately receptive to the idea of being the focus of a film?
Well, it was more natural than that. It was just going to meet her and getting their story, talking to their uncle because he's their guardian. It was just, in the beginning, it was a lot of just spending time with them. They were in school half the day. Every other day it was kind of a weird schedule. They weren't in school very much, so then they would have a lot of schoolwork to do at home. So we just spent time with them. Hasan came over really soon, right after I met them, and spent time and taught them. We used a little Osmo Pocket. It was just an easy little camera that they could switch back and forth, like selfie view and front view. And we started showing them the camera. And then it really was that she was interested in the camera. It was obvious that she was the one that was like going to take it when we weren't there and going to show us around the camp. And she gravitated towards it really early, but it was a slow process to say, like, this is a film about you. I think that was a big learning process for all of us to realize that was what was going to happen.
Oh, sorry, Hasan, go ahead.
Just I had always been interested. We didn't know what final form it would take. I'd always been interested, still am interested, sort of between the power dynamics between filmmaker and participant, and sort of looked at ways of balancing that. So when I introduced Mediha and her brothers to the camera, I wasn't really sure what that would look like in the final form of the film. But yeah, as Annelise said, very quickly she took the reins, not only of the shooting and whatnot, but of the narrative itself. So she was very interested in using it as a tool from almost the get-go.
I mean, it clearly seemed like a therapy for her to have the camera listening to her in a way that, to be able to tell her story in a way that she couldn't to other people.
Yeah, and she says that all the time in her Q&As. It was a therapist to her before she knew what a therapist was. It was her first or her only friend at the time, and she said it lifted a weight to talk to this camera.
You know, a lot of filmmakers are intrigued by the idea of giving a camera to their subjects, or, you know, in fact, do that as well. So I wanted to go a little bit more into the mechanics of that. I mean, did you train, you know, to what extent did you teach her things like, you know, don't have the light behind you or you'll be in silhouette? You know, how to get clean audio. Was the mic on the camera itself, you know, for simplicity's sake? And did you have a lot of really bad
Yeah.
audio because she didn't know to not, you know, film in
Yeah.
noisy environments?
Yeah, it was certainly a learning curve, but you know, as you guys are all aware, you can now get 4K cinema quality cameras in the palm of your hand for, you know, doesn't break the bank. So and kids that age are very intuitive. They've got access to TikTok, Instagram, and the cameras, yeah, we they would go out, shoot a batch, come back, and I would go over their footage with them on a laptop and explain, you know, the ND filters. Yeah,
Sunglasses.
And filters.
I explained it as sunglasses.
Can you
Uh,
explain it to me? Tell me how to use an ND filter.
yeah, yeah. So when the footage came in, they these kid it was Medea, but also Gazwan mostly, but we were shocked by the quality of what they were recording, and then um, as sort of the lessons, you know, we didn't need to give them lessons anymore. We'd give them pointers. It very quickly, you know, when we got the first batch of footage translated, and we heard sort of what Mediha was saying, and the voice she was already finding. That's when it went from, you know, teaching them how to frame their shots to teaching them, you know, how to sort of the essence of what a documentary film is.
Yeah. Just a side note to everybody. I'm going to save the last, say, half hour or so of this for your questions. And I have a ton of questions of my own. So if you put questions in the chat, I guarantee you I'm not going to see them. So save
That's
them.
what I'll save it for later, but
Yeah,
that's what I saw.
yeah, save them for the last half hour. So when you're watching this footage played back, and first of all, are you getting saving the files, you know, onto a hard drive of your own? Is that part of the deal you had with Medea, is that, you know, we're making this film, we don't know quite how it's going to go, but we want to keep whatever you do?
Yeah, I mean, it was very clear to them that we were making a film from the start. Although we didn't know the final form of it, they knew that this was going to be a story about them. And then yes, we would do footage dumps. Annelise and I were in Iraq for a long, long time. And in and out of the camp, and not just for filming, as Annelise said, you know, we spent a lot of time with the family, with the community, with the kids. So yeah, it was just when they would call us and their memory card was full, we'd come get it, review it with them, and just sort of um, go from there.
Yeah.
Hey,
And they would see it. They could play back, of course, at any time, but they would see it on the laptop screen with us every time they
yeah,
gave it to us. They knew what they were giving us.
right. Um, so do you both speak, what's the language that, and do you
It's
speak
Kurdish.
Kurdish? And
It's a certain dialect.
Did you speak Pidgin Kurdish, or did you
We learned
learn?
we learned little words to communicate very basically, to be um just not rude and just like engaging with people, but we had a really reliable, kind, very hardworking translator that was. He worked with me at the organization I was working with. I was teaching a photography course, and he was the translator for that. So he actually learned how to translate specifically about photography and videography. And it was kind of a trial run with him for that. And then we hired him to be our translator on on Mediha, and just he had to be trustworthy with the family. He had to be with us all the time through things that were really sensitive. So that was how the language barrier was, like, we worked with it.
And also there was, I've mastered baby English from my time in Thailand. And really with kids, like, you can kind of just communicate. And then, Medea now speaks near fluent English. And she learned it quickly through voice notes and just being around us. Just because at that age they're sponges. So the translation that was pivotal for the start, but it slowly just became natural to communicate with him.
Yeah, I mean, she had little pidgin English phrases that were, started entering into the film towards the end there. So,
but it changed. Like, I mean, we were there in the beginning of 2019, and then that final scene is the end of 2020, and even after the final scene, which some people have seen it, some people haven't, but it was a big chaos of the family members just all around, and they were saying things to me, and then it was actually a beautiful moment where one of the Ghazwan and Mediha turned to me, and they were translating to me about what all the other family members were saying. I was like, whoa, this is the first full circle. Nice. They learned English really well, especially Mediha.
So that's a lot of time you're spending hanging out here, not even knowing quite what the film will be. I mean, did you have any kind of funding at this point, or was this all kind of out of pocket?
It was out of pocket, some donations, but yeah, mostly out of pocket.
So at what point did you decide to also follow the rescuers? And what was the process of finding them? And did you connect them to Medea's story, or were they already involved with trying to rescue the mother and the younger brother?
Yeah, so it was initially going to be a story about, the working title was The Missing. So it was going to be about the fact that although the world had moved on from the genocide and from ISIS, there were still at the time 3,000 plus Yazidis in captivity or otherwise missing. So we sort of embedded with them early on. The main rescuer, Bazad, in the film, he had actually, you saw it briefly, but he had actually rescued Ghazwan, and he was very familiar with the family. He had also, made progress on the missing brothers case in the past, and he had worked on, not only that case but many other cases. So yeah, when we got there, he was familiar with it. Unfortunately, at the time, that was when the rescues were pretty much coming to an end. Just they didn't have the finances, they didn't have any resources, any support. So it certainly, us coming there certainly sort of brought interest back to this family's case in particular.
So there was actually like an influx of rescues right at the time that we started, because Baghouz fell as the last ISIS stronghold, fell in March or April of 2019. So there was this last boost of there's a chance to find our family members. And so then after that, once they, like, that kind of closed up and they realized who was coming home and who wasn't, the rescues turned solely to finding people in Al Hol, finding people in Turkey. It was a more complicated process after, like, right at that time. It was a transition period. So just getting there at that time happened to be a time where they, like, felt renewed energy to finding people.
Mm-hmm. What was the crew for shooting the verite scenes with the rescuers? Was Hasan, were you doing the cinematography? Annelise, were you doing sound? How big was
when it came to the rescuers, Hasan was alone. So he had his mic on his camera. You would mic up when you needed to, but for the most part, he was a one-man band for the Syria part, and in Turkey, Anissa was there as a second camera, but in Iraq, we were a really small crew and we had to split up a lot. But when it came to the rescue scenes, Hasan was alone.
Yeah, and also to get back to your question about sound. Yeah, sound was an issue with Media's camera. It's sort of what gave us the idea, along with sort of a final bow on giving her agency for the narration that you see in the final cut. But yeah, we wanted to lean into the roughness of her filming, and we left in camera drops and lens smears. So we wanted to keep that rough around the edges final product. But yeah, sound for what I was filming, obviously I could only be really a one-man crew, so it was mostly camera top. I would carry a little Zoom handheld recorder, and I'd put that on the side of the room. Oftentimes I'd record a third audio on my iPhone voice memo. And so, yeah, it was very guerrilla style filmmaking, because it sort of had to be.
Kait, that must have been
Yeah.
fun to sync up the phone audio.
Yeah, no, it was good.
You I mean, did you have to do a lot of audio sweetening in post for
Yeah.
to clean up?
Our post team did an incredible job over in Sweden. Yeah, they did really an incredible job in getting this the way it is.
It was a lot of mismatched things. It was phone audio. It was like I had a handheld mic kind of on the side of my backpack while talking to the women that might have seen their mom. So that's just like, it's just a lot of patchwork.
Yeah. But it's fine, I mean, I think it's to the film's benefit that the scenes, the verite scenes look so different from Medea's video diary. I
Yeah.
mean, they should. You want to know what's what. So,
Yeah.
Hassan, in terms of filming with the rescuers, I think it was Bazad in particular was the main guy. There was one point where they're talking about the money that it costs. I think it was 150,000, and he very handily translates what US dollars that would be. Did you kind of ask him to be aware of that? And I wouldn't think that's something that naturally somebody would say to translate it into US
It
dollar.
is because that's the currency that they use.
Okay.
For these rescues, they come in US. The ransom demands come in US dollars, and
ISIS.
ISIS
Okay.
ransom demands come in US dollars. And also everything sort of, even in everyday life, it's brought back to the dollar.
Okay. So there was no like working with them in terms of like you didn't discuss kind of what you were trying to do and what your intent was with them?
So you're talking about the rescue scene when
The
they're
rescuers,
talking?
yeah.
Bashar
Yeah.
and
No, but
Bazad, I think.
I'm sure they knew what needed to be explained. But
Right.
no, he brought up the translation or the currency change totally by himself.
It's also good to note that Bashar is a family member. Bazad is a Yazidi. He didn't live in Sinjar, but they're all really connected, and they all we spent a lot of time with them too. It wasn't just on for these scenes.
Days.
Bazad he still is a part of our life, and Bashar is just around even if we're not filming because he's part of the family. So
Yeah.
So they
they
clearly,
knew what was happening.
right. And you, I'm sure, had discussions with them about what the film was and what you were trying to do with it. But how
Of
much of
course.
those conversations did you have with Medea and her brothers? Or did you just kind of let them be and, let them film what they were going to film? But was she kind of aware that you were also there was this other aspect to the film?
Yeah, certainly. She knew that she knew we were with the rescuers. A lot of scenes, were of sensitive nature, especially involving her mother's rescue. So, you know, we withheld some details just for everyone's safety and security for those scenes, but they were very aware that I spent a lot of time in Turkey looking for the brother with the rescuers, that didn't make it into the edit. But they were very aware that, yes, we were looking for their family members and there would be another side to this story. And also they were very, once we knew that this was these were the threads we were using, we slowed everything down and really brought them on board as far as what a documentary film is, who is going to see this. We were very clear with them, we just wanted to set expectations that this film may never come out, this film may not change your life, all of those things. So they were very aware that, yeah, this was going to reach beyond this camera lens that they're talking into. And they were very aware that, yeah, there was another production going on with the rescues.
Yeah.
Given that they're minors, did you have, normally we'd get releases from the people in the film, in lieu of maybe a written agreement or something, did you just have them on camera say that, yes, I understand what this is and I'm okay about being filmed, or what did you do to cover yourselves in that way?
Yeah, so of course we did everything by the book as far as their uncle was their guardian, so of course we got consent from him. But it was really important to us to again, if we were going to do a true collaboration, talk to these kids about consent, continuous consent, and be very intentional with our filmmaking practices. Of course, that code of ethics is forever evolving, and we wanted to play a role, hopefully, in part of that evolution. So yeah, it was a challenge, of course, and we wanted to face it head on as far as filming with underage survivors of an atrocity. I think a lot of that trust that was built came from the amount of time we spent with the kids. We were not a news segment who swooped in, got the lurid details of these captures and sexual slavery and then left, which is what most people did. So not only, did we get consent through the uncle, but we explained and continued to explain through the years what we were doing, their role in it, who this would reach, and all of that.
Yeah, it's interesting
And it
because
was
oh, sorry, Annelise, go.
also, we got translators that were part of the community. It was every part of her family, Mediha's, the kids, every part of their family knew what we were doing. It wasn't just the dad side of the family, it was the mom side who also did interviews, and everyone was a part of it. So they at any point they talked among themselves and they all had to be on board for us to be involved at all.
Right.
And our translators changed with what we were talking about too. It was really sensitive to talk to Mediha about things. So we had to have a female translator that she knew and trusted. We used her English teacher, as a translator a lot of the time too. So
right. It's interesting that you talk about the camera being, or she talks about the camera being her therapist, but you also said you were playing back footage with her, in part to explain technically how to use it. But you're obviously hearing all these painful stories of her experiences and trauma. So in a way, did you become her therapist as well? Is this stuff that you actually talked over with her, or did you kind of try and keep your role a little bit more professional in some way? I mean, the line could get very blurry there. You talked about the power dynamics of
Sure.
Filmmaker and subject too. So
yeah, I feel that you can't help but get close to your participants if you're doing the job correctly, and that trust that I mentioned before, that had to be built. We looked out for these kids and continue to this day. We can give you an update on Mediha at the end, but they meant a lot to us from the beginning, and we knew we meant a lot to them. So as far as blurring professional and personal relationships, I think whatever we did it was always done in the best interest of the kids. So yes, we were there as, older sibling figures. Of course, we were going to become that. That's Annelise helping them with homework, us being present just night after night in the camp. But of course, yeah, we realized that this was also a film we were making. And so while we had to put their best interests in mind, we had to sort of make sure we were at least aware of those boundaries and just, progressed with sensitivity.
Yeah, it actually, specifically for Mediha, she talked about a lot of things off camera. So of course, a lot of what she described isn't in the film, and even things that were on camera, we chose not to put in the film. But one of the translators, the female translator, that she was kind of a friend to Mediha and became more of a friend to Mediha because of this. And she was studying psychology in school at the time. And she became someone that she could talk to, and then like more of a consistent person that lived in the same camp, because it was a balance of like, I'm not going to be here forever, like at least in person. You can always talk to me on the phone. Like, I mean, Hasan talks to her every day for the last 5 years. So I think
I was just with her.
Yeah. We became a more stable people in her life than, which is, it's something to think about. We're not really sure how to handle it, except for to just try to be there for her continuously. But she had therapy in the camp from time to time, but it was never consistent. So when she talks about her friend as a camera as a friend, it's really because it became the only thing that was consistent. It was something she could always talk to. The funding for NGOs just drop after 3 months, and she loses another psychologist. So she was realizing that this was a consistent thing in her life that she didn't have.
Again, for other documentary filmmakers out here, let's talk more about maybe in terms of like what you learned or advice you can give in terms of working with a participant who can get very dependent on you and having you in their lives. I mean, you guys are clearly really generous with your time and give, completely given over to helping her. Not every documentary filmmaker can do that. So what do you advise other filmmakers, about the boundary, where the boundaries are? Like, let's say you're working, I mean, I've worked in circumstances where I shot on a film with a very, very poor family.
Mhm.
And the filmmaker was finding ways to give them money. What do you do if they ask you for money? Or a percentage of the film maybe, or something. They have this outside notion, some participants, of the profits you might make from the film. So how do you deal with that? And like, what would you advise other filmmakers in terms of when those things come up?
Yeah. Look, I think you owe it to your participants to have a relationship with them that extends past the film. I understand why filmmakers don't do it. It takes time and it's expensive. But I do think that you should not just film your story, take their story, mold it how you see fit, and then you're the one who benefits from it. So I made that commitment, the team made that commitment early on. It's been really, really hard. So I will say again that I understand why all filmmakers don't do it. As far as, how to support them, I know it's an ever, it's right now it's a conversation of paying participants, not paying participants. There's ways to support these people who are dedicating so much time to your project, giving their life story over to you. There's a lot of ways to support them other than, outright paying them. But I do believe that you owe it to them to support them in that way as well, in sort of a variety of ways.
A lot of the discussions between us as a team has been focused on Mediha's life just being full, trying to guide her in a way that creates a full life for her outside of us, so that she's the one that wants to, like, she chooses, like a child, she chooses to spend less time with us, or she doesn't, she has a friend to talk to, she has mentors to talk to, so we can be there for her always. But we're really focused on like school and mental health and things that are going to shape her life into a full life now, so that she doesn't have to rely on us, but she can.
Yeah. As a producer of a film that, has a somewhat similar situation, we're trying to figure out what we can give back to the participant in terms of involvement. If he goes out speaking with the film, does he get, the speaking fee, or does he get a part of, an overall fee for his, for going out and doing the promotion with us? Did you have any of those kinds of discussions, or was it just among yourselves about, was Medea brought into that? How did you navigate, just like what kind of financial participation she might have?
Yeah, it's a question that should be had with your participants. So when you get to that point, it's everyone's on the same page. We had the discussion. Of course, it's hard to explain things like distribution,
Right.
even to me. Someone please explain it to me. But festival, they see you in a theater full of people, and they're like, "Oh, the people are making millions." It's like, well, actually, no, we're not being paid to be at this festival, or that type of thing. Mediha benefits a lot from. I can't really go into the weeds just because of her asylum situation, but she is very well taken care of here in New York. All her needs are met. But as far as, what would be deemed as a job or pay, yeah, I think we'll table that for now.
But there is opportunity for, like, there have been funders specifically donating to,
Right.
not funders of the film, but people that specifically donate to Mediha, and we just have it aside for her, and that's something that we have to figure out what to do with. But she knows it exists. If she wins an award, she knows it's for her.
Yeah, so we do, yeah.
So you talked earlier about beginning by funding this out of your pocket. At what point were you like grant writing during this time, trying to go to, like, say, broadcasters, or where did you go for funding, and how did you actually get funding?
We submitted a lot of grants that we didn't get. So we were grant writing a lot. Yeah.
Hope that makes everybody feel better. You got
A lot, yeah, a lot of those rejection letters, Doug. Grant writing not successful. I think, yeah, OPC gave us a few micro grants during COVID. A lot of this took place with me over. I was over there for much of COVID filming this. It was private donations for the most part, and just piecing together funding and then stopping production when we had to. Yeah, it was a struggle and piecemeal, but yeah, we got there.
Personal credit cards.
Yeah.
So, Kait, at what point did you come into the picture? When were you first? Well, I mean, it's for the three of you actually. When were you in a position where it was time to start editing? And did you know what the ending of the film would be when you started editing?
I was on right away. Hasan had known he wanted to do this project. His sister had brought it to him. She's a journalist. So, pretty much immediately, like, we started cutting a trailer to pitch, and get funding. And we kind of found the stories we went. What Hasan said, it was originally called The Missing. And then, he knew he kind of wanted to give cameras to the kids, like, born into brothels. So yeah, that was the general process. We didn't know the ending. We did know that we wanted to find Barzan. That was kind of like the goal. and their mother, if she was still alive. So that was general, but it was like a lot of figuring it out, and it was a long process. While they were there, I would look at footage, so it was like a lot of back and forth. We were shooting and editing at the same time.
But you weren't
Yeah.
editing full time, were you yet, Kate?
I don't know. That's a question for Hasan. When did I start? I know I looked at a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of like translation
It
stuff.
was
So it was like
sporadic.
it was very
Yeah,
sporadic. And it was
2019,
also
like right from the first year.
Yeah,
yeah.
but it was
And also
also great.
I would like sorry, go ahead, Hasan.
Yeah, it was great to be able to like assemble stuff or sync stuff up, and then so we were editing from early on, sort of as the story evolved. And I had always, had a 3-act structure ish, and like I knew sort of how I wanted it to end, but we could have never sort of dreamed that it ended. And I won't give it away for people who haven't seen it. But so yeah, 3-act structure in mind, but certainly took form as the edit progressed and the filming progressed and the story progressed.
We had to translate as we went, so we had to get it transcribed before Kate could even see it. So like in September of 2019, I brought the first batch of footage. Or actually, Hasan, you brought footage back in May. We did it sporadically, and she was looking at footage, but we needed to get it transcribed to really see the bulk of what the interviews were saying. So it was just really piecemeal.
And we were translating in the camps, getting it translated by Yazidi. So it was sort of like this all-in-one, bit chaotic, but otherwise wholesome process.
And Premiere messing with the titles at the very end when they updated to the new title tool.
Totally
Correct.
new
Couldn't, like,
subtitles.
That was
100% new
they
subtitles.
would switch. It was like the most tedious thing with those titles.
Subtitles switched. Imagine that we have a 2-hour interview, and it's fine for the first 3 minutes, and then you notice it's slipping by a millisecond, and then by the end it's 10 minutes off. Every one of our interviews did that for basically the whole edit.
We were sharing projects. Yeah, it was bad.
All right, we'd share a project or export a sizzle reel, and then the subtitles would be 3 minutes off.
Anything else you want to vent about? Get out of your
Yeah,
system?
sorry.
No, just the subtitles. That was the
That's
only thing that like
It's
That was
Yeah,
the
it
only
was
thing
'cause
that went wrong?
no, I mean it was mostly a smooth process. It was like it was a lot of like hopping off onto other projects and coming back because we just didn't have a lot of funding and it was just hard. So, but I mean Hasan took it at the very end and like did stuff, and I like me and Alex would go back and forth about scene arrangement and what he should be doing, and then I hop back on at the end. So it was a very group collaborative process, as all documentary filmmaking kind of is. You do the work where you can do it.
Kate, did you and Hasan know each other before this?
Yeah.
Is that part of how you came
And
up?
Alex.
Yeah,
And-
me, Alex, and Hasan were on
Higher
a
Love.
project together called
And-
Higher Love.
And
That's in the background.
Alex was who?
Alex,
is
another producer.
Annelise's partner.
Okay.
Yeah, he came in to get his laptop in the
He's
beginning.
taking care of the baby.
Yeah.
Ah,
So yeah,
was-
Alex,
too.
myself, and Kate met working on a film called Hell on Earth: The Fall of Syria and the Rise of ISIS, and it was Alex and I's first film job, and Kate was editing there
Right.
at that post.
so the subtitle slip was Hell on Earth Part 2.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
I wasn't on Hell on Earth. That was
See.
just on Higher Love. I just watched them do Hell on Earth.
right. So I take it you were working virtually then, right? Kate, you were where at the time?
I was in Montclair.
New Jersey.
So yeah.
Not-
This one we were
Virtual.
sorry, yeah, I know everyone's all over. Montclair, New Jersey. Higher Love, we were all in the room together. It was like an incubator. Me, Alex, and Hasan just cutting back and forth. But for this one, because of COVID, it was a lot of virtual. I don't
And
even
you're right.
How did you work that? I mean, what platform did you use to share footage? How was that?
Oh no, we'd
different?
bring the footage right to Kate because from New York, we'd
Annelise
bring the
lived
footage to
next
Kate.
to Montclair at the time.
So you would watch it together, Annelise, with Kate or not?
I would
No, I
watch it.
wasn't part of the edit really.
Okay,
I would just bring footage to Kate.
so Kate, you're watching this alone, right? You're not, and so yeah, I mean, I'm really curious about the virtual editing experience and how that differed for you than when you edited with together in the same room. What was
It's yeah, it's a lot of like trust base of like, he had to trust that I'm sitting there doing this stuff and then sending it to him. Um, Hassan's a very hands-on director, so he likes to be in the room. So I could tell like when we were doing that, it was a little bit of a stress, but we figured it out and we got a rhythm going. Like I would check in the morning, I would check in the evening, and so that was kind of like our process. And I would just send stuff off to him. We'd have a dialogue in the morning of what I'd be working on and what the goal was. Sometimes he'd leave me for like a week to just do stuff because it was like, it's going to take me a while to get to the end. But that was our general workflow. And it wasn't that bad. It was fine. I mean, Hassan
I
could
think,
answer to that too.
yeah, I think what also helped us was I have a writing background, so we did a lot of three column type stuff and like sort of where Kate and I had a shared document where we wanted this to go. It was like we sort of write out scenes or whatnot. I would find quotes and time codes that I loved, and I would send that exact time code for her to copy paste. Like she says this here, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you'd
writing
ping
out.
me and be like, find this word, find this
Yeah, find this.
topic.
We're a lot of word searches through transcripts. Yeah,
Was it frustrating for you, Hassan, though, working that way, given that you're a control freak?
I think so. Yeah, frustrating, but certainly something that had to be learned. Also, a lot of this time I was in Iraq, so time difference mixed with just stress of trying to get the story while trying to form the edit. That was a lot. So it turned out to be a really good thing that I could sort of be in two places at once and
Yeah.
split my day between production and edit. So yeah, like Kate said, we found a rhythm.
Yeah, for me, the hard part is, a change that when you're in person, you can take care of in 1 minute. But,
Yep.
working virtually, you have to wait overnight to see what the change is, and you can't tell whether the
Yeah.
change works. So that may take another day, and
Yep.
all the little
Yeah,
changes.
that's the biggest headache when you're doing it. Because we kind of have the same vision when we're cutting. Like that's the one thing is like I know when we're in the edit together, we have the same goals. But being apart, it was a little more difficult to like communicate what we were trying to do. But yeah, we got it together, and I mean, product now is amazing. So that's all that
Yeah,
matters in the end.
of course. And it is amazing. So congrats on that. How did you show in terms of showing the participants, the rescuers and Medea and brothers scenes, like edited scenes? Did you do that or did you wait until you had a kind of cut to show them?
Yeah, I would show them cool things to get them excited, like sizzles and whatnot. Part of the issue was, um, again, with the mother scenes, it was highly sensitive. Even scenes of me over in Turkey, we shouldn't be showing them just because hopes get up and faces aren't blurred. You just want to make sure that the safety and security of everyone, whether that's a rescuer or whether that's someone you may consider an ISIS member or a kid, just make sure that sort of you have that all buttoned up first. But when we did choose to show them, Medea was first, and we showed her scenes, and it was still a loose cut, and she of course, loved it. Still, it's funny as a little anecdote. She still sits in at every screening at every film festival. I've stopped watching it, a long time ago at these film festivals. And she says that that's further release of whatever's been on her shoulders. She just it's another form of therapy. So when she saw it for the first time, she absolutely loved it. Again, sharing cuts virtually to that region is really difficult. Safety concerns again. So we wanted to make sure we had everything buttoned up before we showed the rescuers the film. But we brought in, they all had a say in what made it into the final cut. We brought it to, many, many Yazidis to make sure that this was a true representation of their culture, their people, and their story. And we got it, props to us, pat ourselves on the back. We got it very, very close. But at the end, there was things that they wanted tweaked or removed, and we respected their wishes. We wanted to make sure that this was a film that they were proud of. That was, it's their story.
And I, I take it they are proud of the finished film.
Yes, they are. So the film, obviously, Mediha loves it. Bazad came, he drove nonstop from Germany to Copenhagen to make it to our European premiere or our international premiere. He was there, got a standing ovation, and the first time he's seen it since we showed him the locked cut. He loves it. The community, if you're going to tell a story about a community you don't belong to, you better get it right. So that was squarely on my shoulders as far as you have to nail this because this is an oft-traumatized community that does not deserve another hit. So the community's response and sort of support of this film has been, honestly, the most rewarding part of this whole process. They all love it, and it tells a tough story and it touches topics that are sensitive within the community. But they're all a fan.
Did you have like a community screening of some kind, or did you show lots of people individually when
Individually, and then there's the diaspora of the Yazidi community is quite large. So we have a lot in attendance in different countries. Copenhagen, we had 30
Mhm.
Yazidi and Yazidi members, community members. Berlin, we're headed to a film festival next week in Berlin, and that's the largest population of Yazidis outside of Iraq is in Germany. So it's just sort of, and it's a very small, close-knit community. So word spreads fast.
Yeah. How nerve-wracking was it to be spending all this time working on it, not knowing the ending? What would you do if you never found the mother? What would, did you, in your dreams, was that the dream ending that the mother would be found,
Um,
and
it's
then
a
there's
good
the
question.
curveball, the
Yeah,
youngest brother.
that that
Yeah.
I answered the other day. I think that I was very, very tempted, and Annelise probably will want to hear this as a producer, but we were out of money and everything. But I was very tempted to um, continue the search for the mother. And then when Dr. Namam, sadly passed of COVID complications, that sort of told me that the film was done because she was the only one doing that work. She died with a lot of the connections and the evidence and everything for these missing women, and that was sort of when this film had to be done. As far as it could have ended also, and Kait will tell you as well. So the identification of her captor, the mother coming home or not coming home, the brother coming home or not coming home, sort of three big things where the film could have ended. And then we sort of chose an ending that, this is really about Mediha. So I think if none of those things happened, this film still would have tracked a beautiful arc of a coming of age story in the hills of Iraq. We just got lucky and through hard work, of course, as well, that some of our stories did sort of come to a conclusion.
Yeah. The reaction of the youngest brother when he came home, was that a curveball for you? Um, uh, did it is is that something as a filmmaker? I hate to, but this sounds so crude, but it's so painful. And yet at the same time, as a director, are you sitting back thinking, wow, this is going to be really good for the film? It's one of the awful, awful things of what we do, as you're
Yeah.
sort of standing outside as a director looking at this.
Yeah, and I'll pass this right to Annie when I'll just say how that kind of came together. So I was in Syria, and I was over there by myself, and overwhelmed, and we had been waiting for the brother to come home. I had gone from Turkey to Syria when we knew he was coming home from Turkey. Um, and it was COVID, so all of the borders were really hard to pass through. So I knew that scene, yes, because as you saw in that scene, they say we're all the kids are like this when they return, and they don't treat them with, they don't hug them. They do hug them and kiss them, but it's sort of like they'll get over it, they'll move on. So I knew that was going to be something that would be very, important to film, but also very hard to film. And I told Annie that just go and be there and don't turn the camera off. Like this is going to be really hard on you psychologically, I know. But yeah, Annie did just an incredible job of capturing the sort of the quiet, intimate moments of her and Mediha and Barzan, and sort of the tragic chaos of what these kids go through when they've sort of been re-kidnapped, or start from square one once again as they're reintroduced to a family they don't remember.
Yeah, so we could see it coming because, well, so actually my brother was with me, but the two of us, we went to Turkey and took over where Hasan had to go. Hasan had to go to Syria. So we went to Turkey and kind of took his place and came home on a bus, a 24-hour bus with Barzan filming, but we don't have a say in how they're going to handle it. We can't interfere at all, but I'm just watching that Barzan is really excited to go. I don't really know what he understands about who he's going to see. He knows it's his family, but he doesn't understand the broader context of it and why he's not with his family, because he also knows that this woman who married an ISIS fighter is his mother, as far as he knows. But he also hasn't. He's an 8-year-old that doesn't really know what's happening, but he's really excited to go see these people that he knows is his family. And he has this little Kurdish flag that he's waving, and he is seeing the flag through the window of the bus, and he's so excited. And at the border, so I don't know if this is sharing too much or what, but his ISIS mother, it explains a little bit that she was protected. She could go back to Iraq in exchange for giving up Barzan. She says goodbye to him, and he doesn't know that he's saying goodbye to her. So he's like this little 8-year-old that's shooing off his mom. And it's just heartbreaking because he's not going to see this person again. He doesn't know it. And so it was a buildup of what we saw would be a terrible moment the night that he realizes he's not going back. He's crying. Mediha knows that she's the only one that can really speak to him a little bit in Turkish. But the family is all reacting in a way that's this is what happens. We already know what happens. This is how they act because they were taken away from the family that they knew. They're used to it. They're used to the brutality of it. Really, it's a terrible situation all around. But we came off of 24 hours of a bus. Barzan wanted to sit next to me, so I didn't sleep at all, and I just was like, okay, I have to just be here and witness it. But just total mess the whole time because it was heartbreaking. It was he was realizing in real time what was happening, and there's nothing anyone could really do to ease that pain except for maybe Mediha hugging him.
Yeah, it's an amazing, heartbreaking scene. It really is. It's you did an extraordinary job with it. It's now what, 3 years later, 4 years later?
That was 2020 November. 2018.
Okay, so
So
almost 4 years later.
yeah.
Um, has he seen the film? How is he adjusted to life?
So he's almost 12, or yeah, in October he'll be 12.
11.
He speaks Kurdish perfectly. After a few months he was speaking Kurdish again. I think there's something to like coming back to your family, that maybe like he knows somewhere the comfort of his family. He's doing really well. He does well in school. He actually, which might be comforting to hear, but they brought him back to see this woman again in Mosul. They brought him because he was distraught about it, and they just knew best how to handle it. So they took him to see her once, and he wanted to see her, and then he wanted to go back, and they took him back to see her, and he actually asked to leave early. He was done. I don't really know the intricacies of it, but he was done seeing her again. I think he has moved on in whatever way he can, at least outwardly.
Did you get a chance to speak to the ISIS mother at all and get her? I mean, not that it would be appropriate for the film, but did you ever have any communication with her? Because that must
I
have been
did.
really actually difficult for her as well.
Yeah, and
Oh,
this a lot of this took place in Turkey, in Ankara. So I was very, attuned to that side of the story. A lot of it we actually can't talk about
Yeah.
because of how that happened, getting him back. But it was
but short answer is
it
no.
was it was it was tragic for her as well.
Yeah. So has the youngest brother, he obviously wasn't brought in on the filming in the same way that the other two brothers in Medea were. Has he seen the film? Is he okay with those scenes of him in there? And how does
He
he?
has, yeah, he hasn't seen the film yet. We want to do it in the proper setting. He's also not very interested in the film. He's interested
Great.
in an 11-year-old. Yeah, we want to show it to him. Medea really wants to show it to him sort of when she can give context to this all because he doesn't.
When he's 18.
Yes, when he's 18, he'll get to see it.
But there were articles written. There were local news stations there at his return. So it was actually the whole camp came together and like ambushed it. They were all around. He knows it was a big deal that he came home. He knows the general story of it, and that it was a public story because it
Mhm.
was on the news.
And that the community feels good about it. So
Yeah.
that's important. I promised that I would let folks ask questions. Why don't you let's start using the raised hand function. I have a few more, but I promise I will get to you guys very shortly. I saw there were a bunch of good questions in the chat. So those of you who put in there, use the raised hand. Um, so let's talk about the distribution a little bit. How did Together Films is helping you with getting it out there? They've come on as an agent of sort of a blurry quasi-agent, quasi-distributor. How did you find them, or how did they find you, and what role are they playing in getting the film out?
Sure, yeah, they're incredible. So Together Films, Sarah Mosses heads it. They're based in the UK. They had until recently were primarily just the impact partner. So we knew them from the films Flea, For Sama, so sort of a lot of overlap. They got into the theatrical distribution game a few years ago. We met them in Copenhagen, but we had been in contact with them before. So that's sort of when they came on. And yeah, now they're handling impact sales, theatrical distribution. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for us. And yeah, they've just been
Well,
incredible.
everybody here wants to know how you get a distributor. So you said you sort of knew of them, but did you make the
Sure.
contact with
Yeah.
them? Did they contact you?
Yeah, sure. I'll go back a few steps. So yeah, everyone wants sales agent distribution. I think, this is our second film now. So there are avenues open that weren't open in our first film. what really benefited this film, and we knew that, we needed it, was early festival success. And we had that in abundance. So we were approached by, various distributors, sales agents. So while we had known of Together Films, it'd be naive to say that the festival success didn't play a large part into sort of them coming on.
Was Doc NYC your festival premiere?
Yes.
Okay. And you won the grand jury prize or the top prize there?
Yeah,
Yeah, that helps.
that helps. Yes. And then our international was at Copenhagen, which is a remarkable
CPH Docs, right?
CPH Docs, correct.
Okay.
So that also really helped. Just being in competition there, that really helped. That's sort of, in my opinion, the place to sell or to make progress with a film like this would be CPH Docs.
Yeah. And by the way, folks,
I
we have on our YouTube channel, I was at CPH Docs and did a bunch of interviews that are up on our on the YouTube channel in a playlist. They were really good. I mean, very short interviews with a lot of filmmaker and industry people talking about how they navigate a festival like CPH Docs. So recommend you see that. Was Medea at that screening?
So
At
Mediha,
CPH Docs?
Mediha can't travel internationally right now because of her situation, her asylum situation. But she does zoom into some. But no, she was not at that. But we were lucky. So Annelise and Alex had just had a new baby. And they came on the road for various stops. My sister, who's a producer for Anissa, she's European based. So like we tried to have some representation besides, I go to most festivals, but besides myself.
So I couldn't help but notice there is a very famous movie star who is one of your executive producers. We all wonder, how do you get a Emma Thompson or similar, someone of similar stature on board as an exec producer?
Yeah, we're so lucky to have Emma, not just on the film, but sort of in our lives or in my life. She's how do you do that? Well, I had made when I was still an English teacher, a refugee short film. It was sort of my first foray into doc, and it went viral on YouTube. I was over in the Greek islands, Lesbos, during the Syrian refugee crisis. It went viral. She emailed me, and we became friends. Then that sort of turned into a mentorship, friendship. And then she's very active in the human rights sphere. So I just sort of talked to her about it at first, and then it became more and more formal. And then at DOC NYC, it became official. But yeah, we're so lucky to have her. We thought, we would be happy just with a name only situation, but she's done so much and generously lent her time towards sort of little missions we've had that we had no expectations of her doing. That's, emailing festival heads, just sort of everything.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yes. Yes.
That's helpful.
Yes, less helpful. So you'd think it would be very, very helpful. It was helpful, but the fest game is a hard game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know.
Yes.
Two final questions. I mean, there's a bunch of executive producers on there. What are they there because they're contributing money, they're donors, or are they fulfilling some other function?
Yeah, mix. You kind of do what you have to. I don't know if I should name names, but some of them are there because they provided post-production support to get this film finished. Yeah, some of them are on there because they generously lent their time way over what they had thought it was going to. It just sort of snowballed with the success of the snowball. So they just sort of earned that. whether that's festival help or day-to-day support of how, we're still young filmmakers. Yeah,
One
so
is really important for Mediha's
yeah,
situation, has been really helpful in that.
yeah,
Just different things for each one.
Yeah,
yep.
great. Final question from me, but and then we'll go to the hands up. What coming out of this, what are some of the takeaways from the experience? Like, what are things that maybe you would do differently? And what were things that you learned that you might advise other filmmakers, having, um, you know, hard won firsthand experience?
Sure. Yeah. I'll say, I don't think I would have done anything differently just because this is how you learn. My first film, Higher Love, was really, really hard as well. And uh, that forced me to learn skills and aspects of not only filmmaking, but life that I wouldn't have learned if I had $1 million sitting on the table. Um, I think sort of a word of advice would be, you know, tell stories that you are truly passionate about because you're going to spend not just filming days and production days, you're going to spend 5 years of your life, 10 years of your life on that subject. So make sure that the cause, of course, you believe in the cause, but also that these are participants. This is a story. This is a community that really means a lot to you because that is going to become your life.
Yeah, Annalise?
Yeah, to go off of that, it's just you have to believe in your film and the subject of your film, like the person, but the story, you have to believe that it's the best thing and people should watch it, because even people that are interested in these issues that you think would be like wanting to look at your movie and spend their time or their money seeing it, you really that's not necessarily the case. It's really hard to get people to sit down and watch it. There's a lot of options out there, and there's at any point we could have just closed the book and just said like it's just another documentary. But we really had to be, I hate using this word, but cheerleaders of it. We had to truly believe in it, because that is the feeling that people get when they talk to you. You have to really care about it. You can't pretend.
Um, I lied. I have one more question. Because a lot of people will be coming to this from the YouTube channel and have not seen the film. And maybe not everybody here got a chance to see the film. Where is it playing? When it's opening in New York, October 11th. Can you talk about that and where it's going to be playing from then on?
Yes. Yeah. So we're super excited. Exactly 2 weeks out. We open our theatrical at Film Forum here in New York City, which is just an honor because that's a venue, of course, that we talked previously before the call started, but that's where independent film still thrives in New York. October 11th, 7 p.m. is that premiere, but we play the whole weekend and then the whole week as well. For those of you who have seen it and you don't want to come out again, please send family, friends, anyone in the filmmaking community. Mediha will be there. We'll have a few special guests. It's really important for us to sort of start strong with as far as how theatrical numbers work. It's very important for us to start strong here in New York, and then we go to LA starting the 18th, and then to London for our UK theatrical, and then back to the US for various cities.
I thought you said that Medea, because of her asylum situation, couldn't leave the country. How is she able
She,
to?
so she, well, she's coming. So Medea, update. Medea lives in New York.
Oh,
Yes, I
oh,
thought that was yes. Medea lives in New York and comes to American festivals with me.
okay.
Yes, we've gone above and beyond, I'll say, as far as securing her a brighter future. Not too many details that can be given, but she's doing incredibly well. She's just finishing her first full month of full-time school. She's really thriving. So she will continue to come to, although now we're sort of really focusing on what her life will look like after the film, and all of that, where she's still come to the LA premiere and the New York premiere.
Great. That's great to hear. Okay, questions, Mitch, and then Mark.
You're muted.
Yeah, unmute yourself, Mitch.
Let's ask Mark to come up next, Doug, because
Sure.
Mitch is.
While you're working on it, Mitch, Mark, we'll come back to you, Mitch. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't really have any questions. I just kind of want to give praise to you, your team, on, I mean, I can't even imagine a harder way to tell a freaking story. And you guys just did a beautiful job. And when I first started watching it, I didn't want to watch it. I was going to turn it off. And then you just pulled me in. And I was just so moved by the way you told this story, because it could have been told on such a different level. And, you know, I think this is the epitome of audio is king. And the way Kait maneuvered that audio around and told this story was just fantastic. And it was an editing marvel. First of all, on this little camera, and you're getting this great story. And I just appreciated so much. And at the end, I just went, wow, what a beautiful film. And I think you saved her life. You saved her life. And now look at, she's in New York, but in that situation where she was brutalized, she was still brutalized when she comes back to her families, and she can't talk. She can't talk about the situation. And it is so strong and powerful. And I just wish Americans could see this, to see the difference in how people live and how privileged they are to be here in America. And just wonderful job, you guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing.
Mark. And if I could just quickly, Mark, that was so beautifully put in, and thank you. If you are unable to get your friends and family out to the theater, what also really helps us is to sort of take those sentiments and leave that in any kind of review forum on IMDb or any of the platforms. It really helps. As Mark said, you know, it's a tough watch. So added context from previous viewers, especially with, you know, words such as those, those are really helpful. So that would be great as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. And I totally agree with your sentiments. Mitch, I see you've unmuted successfully. So
yeah, I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Sorry about that. Guys, it's such a remarkable achievement, and it's a real tribute to cinema verite and how it could be deployed now. You've advanced the form, I think, and it's really remarkable. I have a couple of questions. I'll just ask them, and you can answer them. I'm very curious as to what their current ages are. You said Bazan is 12, or almost. I produced and hosted the Refugee Voices in Film conference in Cannes a few years ago, and UNHCR was part of it, and there was a very specific criticism of the United Nations in the film, and I'm just wondering what you hope this will activate in terms of shifting the way we, the world, responds to refugee crises and the kind of horrors that this depicts, and the need for repatriation, reunion, and all of that, because it's you didn't obviously have time to get into the whole political part of this, but I think there's a political result that's possible from it, and I'd love for you to talk about that because it's such an extraordinary achievement in documentary storytelling.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we set out to make this film in hopes that it would achieve change in those fields you were talking about. But we wanted to do it sort of, and we talk of Mediha as sort of a Trojan horse. We didn't want to have sit-down interviews. We didn't want to talk policy. We didn't want to talk politics. We didn't even get into the Kurdish-Iraq issue where, half the film is there in Kurdistan, half the film is Iraq, it's semi-autonomous. We didn't want to get into any of that. So we certainly didn't want to get into any of the UN issues, the tribal issues, the different warring militia in the region. The scene you're referring to that Dr. Nimam was a bit harsh with her words of the UN. We kept them in there because they were Dr. Nimam's truth, Dr. Nimam's opinion. And I will say that, the UN has been incredibly supportive moving forward. It's never been an issue. They're hosting a screening of ours at Film Forum. Mediha has visited the UN and will collaborate with them in the future. So we wanted to affect change, of course, on a grand scale. And we're finding the film is doing that. So we've screened at numerous embassies, consulates, many impact screenings. This was the 10-year anniversary of the genocide this past August. So we are trying to refocus the spotlight on something that the world moved on from very quickly, if they ever focused on it at all. We are also, very cognizant of the fact that the world has also moved on from Ukraine. The world is in the process of moving on from Gaza. The world's attention span is very limited for stories like this. But we hope that we show Mediha and her brothers, they are the faces, they are the unfortunate result of conflict. This is not just in Iraq. As I said, this is around the world. So we want to affect change on the Yazidi front, but we also want this to start conversations not only about international conflict, but gender-based violence, sort of everything you see in the film. We want those to spark conversations and eventually lead to some meaningful change.
The kids are nice.
Sorry, Annelise.
The kids.
Mediha is 19. Ghazwan is 18. Mediha will be 20 soon. Ghazwan's 18, Adnan is 15, and Barzan is about to turn 12. And to go off of Hasan's, we're not the best people to know what the answer is because this has been a problem. Yazidis have faced a lot of conflict for thousands of years. But at least if we're bringing attention to the cause and what happened to them 10 years ago and what happens to them many times before, then at least the attention will be brought on the organizations that work with them directly and have psychological help for them, or working on rebuilding their cities, or whatever it is that the community thinks that they need. At least the organizations will have attention on them now.
We don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to ask the people asking questions to, or if they're just commenting, please keep it very concise for time, and so everybody can get a chance. Jim and then Christine.
So in the film, we see the young boys playing together, but we don't see Mediha with any women her age. You talk about how isolated the women are who return from these experiences. It sounds like they're also isolated from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stigma was real. The stigma was real, and the situation has changed as far as acceptance of these returning women and girls back into the community. Before, they were not allowed to come back with or without children. That changed. So it's a religiously and culturally conservative and ancient community. So they have changed in a lot of ways. There's a lot of, I don't want to say work to be done, but there's a lot of things that are still that they're still working on as a community. But yes, her returning was she was alone a lot of the time. And yeah,
most of the other girls who had the same situation were they got asylum in different places. They were part of different programs. I can't get into why Mediha's family did not get asylum, or they weren't moved to another country. They weren't, but a lot of the other girls were, and the ones that weren't, even the ones that they decided not to go to other countries, and that means that they're probably someone who wants to be at home and they're really traumatized and they don't go out either. So all of them are really isolated. She had one friend that had just gone to Australia.
Great. Christine.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. A question about your editing process. I know that Kait, you and Hasan have worked on other films together. Do you use a paper cut? Do you not? In what? Why yes and why no?
For Higher Love, it was more paper cut based, but Hasan's a very verite shooter, which is amazing because the talking head documentary is like a thing of the past, in my opinion. If you're going to make a good story, people want that fly on the wall kind of moment. And then, so the process was just like, he would give me scenes, and this is what I do with every doc I watch. I watch it, and if I have a feeling, then that means that it's probably going to be impactful for the viewer. So that's really my process. And then me and Hasan going back and forth of like, what's the like act one, the act two, the act three. And we also had our boards of like scenes and then slipping them around on our board. But yeah, that's our main way of like kind of working. But Hasan also likes to write. So there's a lot of aspects. We do a lot of like mix and match of how we do a cut.
Yeah, and it really helps me with a writer's background to even film with that in mind. To not only not over film, but to sort of be intentional with my filming, knowing that, you know, with a background in editing, knowing that this was eventually gonna end up in Kait's lap. So yeah, being intentional, not just in the paper cut and the edit, but also sort of what you're filming.
And you mentioned a 3-column thing. I'm wondering what your 3 columns were. And thank you.
Video, audio, notes. That's what it was. Just sort of super rudimental. Sorry, three columns. So 3-act structure is what we had. That sort of maps out hero's journey, sort of any story. But the 3-column, I think it actually was more than 3 columns. But yes, audio, visual, and notes for where you saw a scene going.
Hasan and Annelise, we're butting up against 1:30. Are you okay staying a few more minutes for?
Yes, I have until 1:40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joanne, you'll be the last. We have 5 questions. Make them quick. Stephen, then Jennifer.
Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to the filmmakers. I am so in awe of your journey and your commitment, because I know there was a lot of risk in terms of making this project. But I wanted to ask you some filmmaker technical questions, because being out in the field for so long and having all these disparate, kind of elements, how did you get your team together in terms of your sound design, your composer, your VFX? How did you allocate the effort to finish your film so that it would be ready to deliver?
Yeah, it was a struggle, for one, huge struggle. Funding, of course, being the biggest hurdle. We have, because of how we came up in the film world, we have good friends and good community that we believe in, and they believed in the project, so that we were able to be more flexible as far as budget. So that was important, but it was also important to us to go with the right people. So yes, our composer is our friend, but he was not our friend at the start. He sat down and we were just sort of live scoring it to a muted film, and I just thought this is who's going to score this film. And then for the rest of the finishing process, a lot of it was budgetarily influenced, but we still had to get sort of the right people, and know that they could get us, we had a vision in mind what this film was going to look like finished, and we had to make sure that they could get us there.
Great. Thank you. Jennifer.
Hi there. Thanks for explaining your process about working extensively with the family members and the local community there, with Mediha and her family and others, extended family and others involved. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about your thinking about working with children, especially younger children? So Mediha sounds like she was a teenager at the time. Being able to understand and consent to the long-term effects of being in a film that's showing a lot of their trauma, and it seems like they're experiencing PTSD. Some people would say that a really young child in that situation wouldn't be able to understand, give consent, even if their parents or guardians are saying, go ahead, it's fine, do it. So can you talk about some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And that's sort of, going back to where we started this whole process. It wasn't just intentional. We didn't set out to do this in an intentional manner with the safety of our participants at the forefront of everything we did. We knew that they weren't just underage or under 18. They were also victims of a traumatic situation that they were, as you said, still in the process of recovering from. We made sure that they were kept up to date on everything in the film, whether that was this scene or something they had said before. Also, we protected them a lot in the edit of things that we thought they wouldn't want said. And then, once Mediha turned 18, she re-consented as an adult and watched the film. And actually, we used to have little consent workshops of talking Mediha through what consent is, and at the end of it, she said, why do you keep asking me if I want to tell this story? Really, she kept saying, this is my story and I'm going to share it with the world. So it quickly became, whatever Mediha saw fit when she was 18, that's what we were going to try to support, and provide her the tools to do that. But yeah, we had to maneuver that very difficult situation of them being underage and traumatized. And I think, going back to this, a lot of it came from the trust we built because of the amount of time we spent with these kids. That's sort of where all of this was born.
I think it's also important to think about for Mediha. She was in a news piece. She was known within her community and outside her community as someone that had been taken. There were no secrets, and things that weren't already out there. So
yeah, we weren't breaking news.
Yeah, we weren't breaking news. And what she's expressed, at least, is that this was kind of a turn on her being a victim. She is a victim of atrocities, but she taking, like, having agency in the way that she was telling this story, she's expressed as being something that's been positive for her life, and it is something that will live on forever. And I don't know if that will change because she's just 19. But at least as it stands now, it's been a spin on how she was seen before, and she was just this quiet 12-year-old rescued, like, not saying anything, not even being able to speak her language. Before that was the public face that people could see.
Peter, Antoine, and then we'll end with Joanne, as quick as we can.
Another applause for your beautiful work and the conscious way that you've constructed the whole environment and process. I mean, it's a model for us in its robust mental health aspects. I mean, it's really beautiful. One point
I imagine you've been in touch with the IRC, International Rescue Committee. I used to work with IRC and know the resettlement process. If you want some contacts, I'll give you my email. Um, Second thing is, I think someone else pointed out the subtitles were hard to read. I know you're working on that, but I used to be in the subtitle business too. I've been in a lot of businesses, but I think you guys are on that. But just from a viewer standpoint, it really is a hurdle. Um, the edit workflow, Christine asked about that because I think for a lot of that those are stumbling blocks, especially working virtually. And so I help co-moderate a group around personal documentary filmmaking. I'll put the information here, but we're talking about edit workflows next week. So thank you for informing
Great. Yeah,
us so
thank you,
well.
Peter. Put that in the chat so people have the link to it. Thank you.
Can we save the chat?
Yes.
Okay. I know there's a lot happening and I want to be able to read them later.
Yeah, we'll save them for you and send. But if you go to the chat box where it says meeting chat, usually in the upper right-hand corner, there are three dots, but it could be at the bottom where you type your
Yeah.
message.
Okay.
You click on the three dots and it'll say save chat. And save it somewhere on some device of yours. Usually in the documents folder, if you have a Mac, there's a Zoom subfolder that it goes to. Who was up next? We lost, Antoine, and then Joanne.
Hi. First of all, it's such an important film because you're showing a part of war and those barbarians. When you look at the news, very often you see, the death and the combatants and things like that. But very often we tend to forget about all the people that are left behind that have to live with all those traumas and those thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have their lives destroyed because of mental issues and psychological issues, etc. So thank you for doing this film that is absolutely beautiful. I started watching it. After 5 minutes, I stopped because I couldn't. As a disclaimer, I live in Beirut, and it's it's not the most fun places. But then I watched the whole film afterwards and was so happy because it's very, very important. And I have a question for Hasan. When you go back into when you go into the Syrian camp, so basically you're going back into hell. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there's an AK-47 in the car just in case something happens. As a filmmaker, you know that you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation because if people learn that you're there and what you're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, it can become very problematic. How, as a filmmaker, how do you cope with that? How do you put yourself in that situation? And then how do you cope with it as it goes along? And what happens afterwards when you just get out of it?
Yeah. And Antoine, I hope you're staying safe there. Medea actually, just the other day, she was on a call with one of our Lebanese friends. And Medea understands exactly what you said, that there's a new Mediha, Ghazwan, and Adnan Barzan created every day in these conflict zones. She totally gets that. So I appreciate you bringing up that point, especially being based in Beirut. As far as the filming of some of these more, dangerous scenes, I never really the Al Hol camp, those shoots, those days, those will stick with me for a long time. To be honest, when you're trying to tell a story and when you're desperately trying to get a film finished, you'll sort of do whatever. You have blinders on to get that story done. I also had great respect and trust in Dr. Nimam. She had done these rescues for years, and I trusted her. She was very, strong-willed and at times hard to keep up with, but I really trusted her. However, I don't speak Arabic, so I didn't really know I knew what was going on in El Hol. I did, but I didn't realize that, they were threatening to shoot us in the heads until I got the footage translated. And then actually, while we were still in the edit, I believe Vice News or another news program did a story on it and just how treacherous it was. Yeah, I as a filmmaker, I won't be putting myself in that position again. I watched the world premiere with my parents. They had no idea I was even in Syria. So seeing the effect on them made me realize that, that probably shouldn't be done again. Although I do always say, Iraq as a whole was far less dangerous than Camden, New Jersey, for me as a filmmaker. Far less dangerous.
Joanne, you're wrapping it up for us. Ruel, I'm sorry, we're really out of time. Hasan has a hard out, so
okay, very short, 3 short questions. First of all, Annelise, can we see the camera? This film is screening today at a film festival in Milwaukee. Is anybody going to be here with the festival? And the third question is, did you use AI for your transcription?
Did not use AI, tried. It was before its final form. I think we could now on the next project, although I shall not be doing a subtitled project for a long time. There's the camera for Annie. And yes, we are in Milwaukee Film Festival today. None of the film team will be there. We're sort of in desperation, last chaotic moments of our theatrical debut, but I encourage anyone in the region to please go support.
AI would not have worked with the Kurmanji dialect of
Correct.
the Yazidis.
Yep.
They just, even Kurdish speakers can't understand the Yazidi sometimes.
Yep. And back to the Milwaukee festival. All of our festival dates, if you want to be sort of tuned in to where we're showing next, when you can either go to medihafilm.com, sign up for our newsletter that gives life updates of Mediha and our upcoming screenings, but also Instagram, Mediha Film on Instagram. That's probably our best resource as far as getting people out to screenings and sort of keeping them involved in not only the film, but in Mediha's life.
Alrighty. I just want to say in conclusion, thank you both for coming. Hasan, thanks so much for getting in touch with me originally.
Yes.
I think it worked out very well.
Yes, I went up and introduced myself to Doug at Copenhagen, CPH Docs.
Appreciate your sharing the film with us, and it's an extraordinary film. It really is. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to share it with the community here and to hear from you. And it touches on so many of the issues that we talk about all the time in our discussions. So it was really, really helpful to hear. And we just applaud the dedication and passion that you had for telling this story and getting it out into the world. So wish you all the best.